My name is Chris Parrish. I've been in the industry for a long time. I kind of made my way through turkey calling competitions and things like that over the past 35 years and been fortunate enough to win every major championship multiple times, and since then retired. I do love the outdoors, and even though I've kind of made my way into turkey hunting, I'm really in love with actually hunting big whitetails, elk, everything that there is to hunt. I love it. But turkey hunting is one of my favorite things because it's a conversation with an animal. And I always look at it like this. I've been doing it 35 years and I learn something every year. I learned that I get my hind end kicked a lot because I don't care how good a caller you are, how good a woodsman you are, how many turkeys you have to hunt, you're going to find times when things just don't work. And you're going to have to pull tricks out of your hat and you're going to have to make things work. The one thing that I think has been pushed off to the side, especially over the last 15 years, and you may not be experiencing it here as much as I have, hunting Missouri and some of the southern states, especially Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, those places that's had seasons for a long time, is turkeys have adapted and kind of become slightly educated. And in fact, more than slightly, very educated. Meaning that even though I think woodsmanship skills are definitely important, I think they're highly important. I think you need to be a better woodsman than you do anything. You need to understand the turkey more than you do anything. But I think we've put in calling on the back burner and the use of calls on the back burner to the point where as our turkeys adapt and get more and more attuned to the way we hunt and how we do things, and we keep doing the same calling type things over and over again, we find ourselves not being as successful. I know I've seen that a lot in giving seminars in the South, and guys go, you know, I used to kill turkeys every year and this is the way I would do it. Now I'm not doing it. And I'm like, well, have you changed your calling tactics? Have you learned to use your calls and be comfortable with them? I'm not saying being a world champion caller, that has nothing to do with it. But are you comfortable with your calls? Do you understand what to say and when to say it and how to say it? And what's going on when you're looking at that situation and how to read that situation? And that to me is what is becoming the lack of importance as we have become good woodsmen. We're going backwards in the way we utilize our calls. And think about this. I don't know how many of you drive very much, but you think about this. Everybody here probably has favorite songs that they listen to on the radio. Play that CD over and over and over and over and over again until that song is so impacted in your brain that you can literally sing, almost sing that thing verbatim without ever playing it. And then pull that DVD out, put it away for a year, and after a year, turn it back on and put that DVD in and see how quickly it comes back to you. And don't come back very fast. But what we do with our turkey calls is we get through with a 4-week season or 3-week season, whatever the season is, and we put them up and we never get them back out again until about 2 weeks before the season starts, and we expect to be comfortable and that thing's running perfect, especially a mouth call. Well, you know that mouth call is like, well, a saxophone or a harmonica. They're instruments. To me, it's important to be comfortable, and as playing the guitar, I know I'll get pretty good at a few notes, a few chords, and I'll be able to play some 3-chord songs, and then I'll put it up and I'll not pick it up for three months, literally because of my travel. And I go down there and I can't hit clean notes. The notes are not clean anymore. And that's just 3 months. Think about a year with a mouth call with reeds. And my good fortune is I work in the business and I build mouth calls for a living. That's part of my job, as well as being a manager for Night and Hail. So I have one in my mouth at least 2 or 3 days a week. So I'm really comfortable with it. When I'm comfortable with it, I'm not afraid to call to the turkey. I'm not afraid to do things when I feel like I need to do it. And I think that's a key importance, is if you're not afraid, you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and why you're doing it. Things have changed, times have changed, and advancements in turkey hunting, turkey calling. We were talking today driving down the road, YouTube. You can go to YouTube and learn in 2 days what it took me 10 years to learn. Literally. So the advancements are there. They're there, and the opportunities are really cool. And I like using decoys, but there's certain ways I use a decoy and certain ways I don't. I do not use decoys in the woods. The reason why is oftentimes, and I don't see it a lot up here, but there's, you know, ridge country, you'll have a turkey coming in and you're setting back off the ridge, which is a great way to set up, and you've got your decoy set up, and that turkey pops up over the ridge and maybe he's 70 yards away, you know, just out of good shotgun range, and he sees a decoy and all of a sudden he's like, whoa, there's a decoy in my face. And it kind of can have the reverse results of what you want. We're in an open field, turkey flies down and he looks 200 yards and he hears the calling and it registers with him that, hey, that's a decoy. Now, I'm not trying to make these turkeys smart. They got a brain that big. They're not the sharpest knife in the drawer. If they were, they wouldn't do the crazy things that they do and come to a call and act the way that they do. But they get pressure shy. I do not believe in call shy turkeys. If they were call shy, they'd never breed and they'd never have babies. They're pressure shy. They're shy to things like us, humans, our pressure. They're shy to predation pressure. There's a lot of reasons why they get the way they get, but I do not believe it's because of calling, because hens call nonstop. Even when you think you're looking at a hen at 200 yards and you think there's nothing coming out of her mouth, can you hear this at 200 yards? No, you can't hear that unless you're right up in her face. And so she's calling all the time. There's things going on all the time. He can hear it further away. It's just like him going, we can't hear that very far, but she can. And all he's got to do is walk around doing that in full strut, and she walks to him. So when we call him in, we're reversing nature anyway. So it's difficult for us to call that turkey in because he's used for the hen to come to him. So in a lot of situations, I'll use decoys. And this was a situation where I went to Kansas, and I'm going to tell you, Kansas turkeys are not what Missouri turkeys are. They don't have near as many turkey hunters there. They're not the same. The lack of pressure makes them a little bit easier to hunt. The night before, we had a big bunch of rain and we were driving around and I spotted some turkeys out in an open field. And here's where using that hair cover computer comes in handy. I watched them and they went down a fence row and cut across this wide open field and roosted in this little draw. But they came from this other side of the field. And I thought to myself, well, there's a pretty good chance they're going to fly down, they're going to work their way back across that field, and they're going to go back up that draw or that fence row and go over on the neighbor's property. They're doing something over there. There was some CRP back in there too, and I had a pretty good feeling that those hens probably had some nests back there, and those hens were going back there to lay eggs and slipping off from the gobblers, but the gobblers were following them. And then after they laid the egg, because they weren't setting yet, they had moved back off of it and were going back down there to roost, because really other than that fence row, that's the only real true roosting spot, because there was a little ditch, a little creek that ran through there and some good roosting trees, and they were using that as a transition. So I thought, well, I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to set up closer to that fence row, kind of in that fence row, and I'm going to utilize a decoy because I'm going to be 400 yards from these turkeys when they fly down and come out. And it was early season. It was the very first part of the Kansas season. And I thought, well, I'm going to use a strutting gobbler decoy with a setting hen that looks like she's squatting in the breeding position and see if I can't make his jealousy factor kick in. Two guys at a bar, one girl, somebody's going to get whipped. And that's what my whole theory was behind that. And that's what I did. And you watch how this unfolds, because I called, and I didn't call a lot. I called enough to kind of get the hen's attention and to get the turkey's attention. It was a dreary day, wasn't much to it, but I let the decoys, once everybody started making their way to it and kind of coming in that direction, I kind of shut up and I let things transpire, let the decoys do their job. And again, it's knowing when to call, how to call, and in what situation do you use what call. And really, we could talk for the next 6 hours, and a lot of it's just a learning experience. Now, these turkeys are roosted over here. And I'm literally sitting on my knees. And I don't even know if you'll be able to hear the turkeys gobble. They're so far away on that mic. And there's only one gobbler that I know of, and with hens. And there's my little decoy set up. The interesting thing I think about turkeys is every one of them is different. No two of them do exactly the same thing. One of them wants to be called to, and you can't shut up on him. You scold him all the way to the gun barrel. The next one, if you yelp at him twice, it's one time too many times. And that's what makes it really unique. There's no place to sit down, literally no place to sit down. And even when I use my vest where I can actually lean back in it and use it as like a stadium seat, if you will, I couldn't see over the dadgum weeds enough to do anything, so I had to get on my knees. It was really uncomfortable. And this hen comes out, and at that point I'm thinking, well, I know I heard a turkey gobble back there, and he's not following her. What the heck's going on? And pretty soon, you know, the whole family showed up. But I didn't want to call too hard to her. I just wanted to see if I could haze her my direction. Just kind of watching her body language and how she was reacting to the call, and whether she was going to make her way that direction. If she turned and walked back like she was totally disinterested and didn't want to be around me, I would have shut up and let things transpire and figured out whether I needed to move and get in position. Because the old adage of call to the hen and aggravate her and make her come to you, that only works a certain percentage of time. Oftentimes they don't want that competition of another hen, and so they'll go back and take the gobbler off, and you're kind of out of luck at that point. See, I'm just kind of playing coy. I'm not calling hard to her, just soft yelping, clucking and purring. Just trying to haze her my direction. Kind of let her know I want a little company up there. And you'll see it as we cut and blend the tape. I mean, obviously, if you let this whole thing play out, we'd be here for 6 months. But now, he shows up, and he's got some more hens with him. However, for some particular reason, this hen has his attention. I don't know whether she's the most mature hen, and maybe she's going to be the first one that's going to be breedable. I don't know exactly what the deal is there. And he's staying there because there's some other hens behind him. You'll see that they're coming up right now. But he's also wanting to make sure he keeps that other hen in his eyesight, and he wants to make sure he's figuring out what she's doing. And as these hens come into view and they see this other hen moving and the decoys, they start all transitioning towards it, and you can see he's starting to get his mad on right now. He's not real happy about the situation. He's like, whoa up girls, this is not going to happen on my watch. He's fixing to march himself up there and get a headache. You notice I'm doing nothing. And you know, of course, this is a 20 power zoom lens. I mean, the turkey's not as close as you think, but there's no reason for me to do anything at this point. A lot of times you'll see on TV and stuff like that, people will call to them, try to make them gobble and do things like that. You know, that's all great for the camera, but that's not really what a person needs to be doing. So they're really not portraying what needs to happen when you're truly trying to kill the turkey. And as much as I enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the woods and everything, it's great, but that tag's in my pocket for a reason. I'm there to fill it. And the two hunts I'm going to show you actually took place the same day. This one in the morning and another one's going to be in the afternoon. And they're totally two opposite hunts showing two scenarios that are totally different from one another. This one was the utilization of decoys, scouting efforts, the whole 9 yards. And I'm going to talk about that once this hunt's over with a little bit.
What range do you usually like to have your turkey come into how close, and what kind of gun are you using?
Well, I shoot a Browning Maxus right now, 3-inch gun. I've never shot a 3.5-inch gun in my life. I just like a 3-inch gun. I'm not a big guy. I don't know whether it's easier to shoot or be shot with a 3.5-inch. I'm not sure, but they do have some crack to them. I shoot a 3-inch gun. I shoot an Indian Creek choke tube. I have no sponsorships with them at all. I've tested all of them. It shoots the best out of my gun. And I shoot number 5s, the new Longbeards. They just shoot the best out of my gun. And you know, it's a killer from 50 yards in. I mean, I could probably shoot beyond that, but I really like turkeys around 30 or 35 yards. Even closer, but sometimes as they get closer, I get, you know, guns shoot so tight nowadays, you get a turkey inside of 25 yards and I get to watching him and I'm liable to throw an air ball up. So I like a turkey around that 30-yard mark. That's my ideal range. And I set these decoys at about 28 or 29 yards. And, you know, now and I know how far beyond that. Now that right there is not by my Browning. That is my old Beretta pintail, which I sent off to Mr. Morales in Florida and had him dupe it up as a turkey gun. And it's a turkey slayer, but I've since then retired it and shoot my Browning. He didn't want to stop, so I decided to shoot him. But
how many times you shot a decoy?
How many times have I shot a decoy? I can't tell you. I try not to shoot a decoy, to tell you the truth. I try my very best to let them get away from a decoy, but I have put some pellet holes in them. In fact, a few years ago, and I don't know if you've watched very many, and I'll stop that there and start it up when we get to the next one. Watched very many Night and Hail DVDs, but a few years ago, Harold and I and David were all hunting together. This is where when they first came out with the original Pretty Boy, if you remember the original Pretty Boy decoy. And I had never hunted with one. I'd never been around that. They just brought it out, and we were in Kentucky, and they set this thing out. And we sat back in there. It's an evening hunt. And in Missouri, where I'm from, you can't hunt in the evening. You can only hunt in the mornings from you know, daylight till 1 o'clock. Which, you know, after about 10 days, it's kind of handy to be able to quit at 1 o'clock and go get a nap, and, you know. And I don't know what their theory is behind that. I hear them say, the mushroom hunters. I'm like, well, if they hunt my property, they're trespassing. So I'm not buying that. They say kicking a hen off the nest. I'm like, you know, I've turkey hunted 35 years. I've turkey hunted 34 states, and I've probably jumped 10 hens in my lifetime off the nest. So it doesn't happen very often. Just some rules and regulations that Missouri's come up with. It is what it is, and we abide by them. That's why they put them out there. But we put this decoy out with the hen, and we sat back and did some calling. And I heard a turkey drum to my left, and I told David, I said, there's a turkey drum right here to the left. He goes, you sure? And I said, yeah. And I've got really good hearing when it comes to particular sounds, and drumming's one of them I can hear really well. And I said, he just drummed again. He goes, I think I heard that. Well, I got the gun up on my knee. I kind of had it lay in my lap. Got it up on my knee, and 2 big gobblers came out, and we had the decoy at about 30 yards, and they ran up to that decoy, and they're making circles around that decoy. And heads going everywhere, and I'm thinking, good Lord, I don't know how I'm gonna get one of these things killed. I'm gonna have to dive the same time they dive. David and they started getting kind of jerky acting. He goes, pick you one out and shoot it. And I said, well, crap, I don't know what to do here. I said, I'm gonna shoot the one on the right. Just whichever one of them is on the right, because they look like a pair of twins. They probably were twin 3-year-olds. I'm gonna shoot that one. And I was shooting Harold's gun. Lesson learned. Don't ever shoot a borrowed shotgun unless you have shot it yourself. Because if a guy says it shoots dead on and he's anything like Harold Light, he lied to you. Because it didn't shoot dead on. And I pulled the trigger on that turkey at 30 yards, and I'll promise you I had that bead buried in the middle of his head. And the wad was 3 foot on the other side. And I shot, and he flies up in the air. Well, instinct kicks in at this point, and I'm like, I just swing up and kill the turkey. I just swung up and shot the turkey and killed him. He flopped to the ground and was done. And we go down there, and I didn't think about the camera running at the time. I was like, oh, crud, man, I probably didn't have that. Well, David had already panned out, and he had me shooting the turkey out of the air. It was a pretty cool hunt, actually. And so we go up there, and Harold goes, you must have been doing some wing shooting this year. And I said, well, I did do some pheasant hunting, but I said, I don't know what happened on that first shot, but I promise you I was on him. He goes, I'm telling you, boy, that gun shoots dead on. A week later, he calls me. He goes, I missed 4 turkeys in a row with it, and I finally sat down and shot it. He said, shot 4 foot high and 2 foot to the right. But that was the first time of using the decoy, and it clicked with me. I was like, these things really work. Now, they'll spook turkeys off too. But there's a time when decoys are really, really, really handy. And I think open field situations, that is the time to use those decoys and to take advantage of them, especially if you have multiple birds that you're dealing with. Now, this was only 1 turkey, but it was early season. That dominance factor was still a big deal to them. And they weren't in the peak breeding mode, but they were in that wanting to breed mode, but the hens weren't ready yet. And that whole scenario worked out right. And again, that's a learning experience. You're kind of watching that. And scouting taught me that. I kind of knew what was going to happen. I put myself between the turkeys and where they wanted to go. And that's, you know, that sounds intelligent, but really it's kind of a simple factor. Scouting to me is one of the most important things anybody can do. If you're not out scouting before the season, listening where these turkeys are, where they're going, what they're doing, and what transition they're in. Does anybody know what I'm saying when I say transition? How many of you deer hunt? I'm sure you do. Well, that's like the rut. There's 4 stages of the rut, and there's 4 stages of transitions turkeys go through in the spring of the year. That's their rut. This is a turkey rut. And you learn those transitions where right now, even though you're seeing a lot of your gobblers strut, you got 3 or 4 or 5 gobblers together, and you got some jakes together, you got a bunch of hens, and they're kind of like wadded up, it looked like to me. They're not really broke up real good yet. Well, that's that first spring transition. Within this, and literally, it can change in a couple of days. I mean, it can happen to where all of a sudden you got 5 gobblers on this piece of property and it's 80 acres, and all of a sudden there's 1 left and they're split up on another 25 80-acre parcels. I mean, that's just the way that works. They split up and they start collecting their harem, and they're separating, they're splitting things up. And that's the second transition. They're getting into that breeding cycle. But the second transition is when the gobblers have kind of established their dominance, the hens have established their dominance, but that peak breeding hasn't hit yet, so the gobbler's pretty vulnerable to come to a call even though he's with hens because she's just ignoring him. And then you got that third transition when you got the peak breeding going on, and that's when we get into that point where, how many times have you been out there and for a week and a half the turkeys are gobbling their brains out, things are going, all of a sudden the lights shut off. There's about 3 or 4 gobbles in the morning and everything gets silent. And you're like, man, or maybe there's a couple, 3 mornings and nothing goes on. But you see turkeys around, but you don't hear anything. That's that peak breeding mode. He doesn't have to do anything. He's roosting close to him. They're looking at each other. He flies down, he's spitting and drumming. She's going to him every day to get bread, and then she's going to go off and lay an egg. And she's going to do that until she gets, you know, somewhere close to a dozen, 13, 14, 15 eggs laid. And then she's going to go sit on those eggs for 28 days. So that peak breeding mode, you got about 2 weeks of that peak breeding mode where things can be touch and go. You have good days and bad days. You have 2 days where you're the king of the world and every turkey you yelp at comes in. You have about 4 days when you might as well throw your calls in the ditch and walk off. And then you get into that fourth transition where the hens are starting to go to nest and set on the nest. And after a couple of days of that, he pretty soon looks around and goes, where's she at? She's not here anymore. And then you, and he breaks his beard trying to get to you. And that's you know, that's kind of like the first transition. Those 2 transitions are the most fun. And so if you scout and you pay attention to this, you see where those turkeys are at in those transitions, and you know how to apply your hunting / calling tactics to that. Now, regardless of what transition they're in, my key thing is getting as close to the turkey as the terrain will allow me before I set up. And if I know where he's roosted at, when I'm talking close, I'm sitting down inside of 60 yards of him if I can. I'm getting close. I'm listening to him spit and drum on the limb before it ever gets light enough to see. Reason why? I'm probably going to deal with hens. Number two, I don't want to call to him a lot on the roost. That's a big mistake a lot of us make. Especially when I first started getting pretty good at calling, I wanted to hear myself call. I wanted to hear him gobble. Well, he'll sit up there and gobble at you till you walk under him. That's what he does anyway most of the time. He'll sit up there and gobble until a hen shows up and he'll fly down to her. So sometimes you can stick him on that limb if you continue to call to the turkey. So I like to just hit him with a little bit, let him know I'm there, shut down, and let him make his way to the ground, and then I'll start juicing the calling up a little bit and trying to get him sparked up. If he has hens with him and they start calling to me a lot, I'm going to pick my calling up because now I'm going to work off of that dominance factor with the hen. But if she starts to subdue her calling, I'm going to go right back and I'm going to bring my calling back down because I don't want to push her away. Just reading that body language and reading that calling language. For example, I call it reading the gobble. Meaning, how many times have you called to a turkey and as soon as you get that first series of yelps out, he cuts you in the middle of it? That he answers before you and you almost don't hear him because you're still calling. Well, that's a turkey that's probably wanting to come up and be with you. He wanting to get in your hip pocket. He's lonely, he wants to be with a hen. And then you got that turkey that you yelp to and you've got that 3 or 4 or 5 second delay and you he gobbles. But it's like a delay and he's still not that far away, so it's not like sound factor, not sound travel factor. That's a turkey that's telling you, 1, he may be on a strut zone, 2, he may be looking at hens. He heard you, he's interested, but his deal is hey, girlfriend, the party's over here. If you want to join, you come over here, but I'm not coming over there. And that's what I call reading the gobble. And then from there, it's a little bit easier to figure out how you need to call to that turkey. Now, I may pick my calling up to see if I can spark him. And if that doesn't work, and it doesn't make any difference, then I'm just going to shut it down and I'm going to try to figure out how I can get a visual on this turkey. And that's the key to setting up close to him, is getting a visual. Because if he flies down and they start to good out, I've got a visual on him. I can figure out kind of what they're doing and where they're going. And if I got terrain, I can get around and get in front of them. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself in position between the turkey and where he wants to go, even when they're on the ground. I hear a lot of people say, well, that's ambushing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Is it a fair tactic? Absolutely. It's a fair tactic. I had someone in Maine one time kind of threw it at me and said, well, you know, but that's not calling him in. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't rattle and grunt every buck in I kill either. But let me ask this question. If you had a 180-inch deer pinned down with a doe in a little 3-acre CRP patch, and you could slip out of your stand and put a little stock on him and sneak around and fire an arrow through his lungs, would you do it? If you didn't, call me, I'll go get it done for you, because I'm fixing to do it. I'm out there to try to be successful, not on an ego trip. I got a tag in my pocket, I spent money at it, I'm taking time off of work to go hunting. My job at that point is to try to be successful and harvest that animal. And if I can use a legal tactic to do it, whether I call him in, and nobody loves a call more than I do. Believe you me, I like to call. But whatever legal tactic that I can use to get that animal harvested, I'm going to do it. That's what I'm going to do. Now, this next hunt, and then I'm going to get to talking about some calling here in a minute. This next hunt is a hunt where a lot of us face this. I'm sure everybody here has probably seen this. This is a midday hunt about 11 o'clock. And we actually scouted this place the evening before as well. We drove over there right after we spotted these other turkeys where I just killed this turkey. And we saw a group of 3 or 4 gobblers with some hens. And we couldn't figure out which place we were going to go. And I actually told Cecil, my buddy, I said, let's hunt this place first where I killed that turkey, and then we'll go to the other one because there's more gobblers there to choose from. And they may be spread out up in the day. And we've got more area to hunt too. It's not just a real small place. We can hunt, it's a pretty large place, so we've got more area to cover. Makes more sense, so if we wanted to run and gun a little bit and strike turkeys, we could do that in the middle of the day. So we get out there, and as we're walking in, as you'll see, I come across this big gobbler track in the mud, and it had rained all night long. And pretty much, I mean, this track all but had smoke coming out of it. I knew this turkey had he had just walked out and turned and walked back in the woods, and how we didn't spook him, I have no idea. And we slipped down there and set up, and I'll explain it real quick, but there's a little bottom field, and then there's a little finger of timber that's kind of a barway or a ridge, if you will, between it and a low bottom field. But it's not very wide. In fact, it's probably not much wider than these rows of chairs here. But you can't see, it's a diversion basically through the field, but you can't see the bottom field from the top field unless you get right to that diversion and look over. So it's a great ambush place for both places to make a turkey think if they come out in that lower field and I get his attention, I can shut up and he's going to think that hen's up in this upper field because he can't see. Turkey comes out in the upper field and I get his attention, he thinks that hen turkey's down the lower field and he can't see. So it was a setup tactic. Great place between those two areas. We know the turkeys frequent there and use it. It's a great place to set up. And I told Cecil when we got out of the vehicle, I said, I'm not taking any decoys with me. I'm tired of packing them. I killed one over a decoy. Let's go see if we can get one on film without a decoy. He goes, man, that's a big open field. And I said, I don't care. Man up. Let's go see if we can get one without a decoy. And so we'll go to the hunt. This isn't staged. This is as we were walking in.
Big old gobbler trap right here. That's as big as my hand. That had to happen this morning too. I'm gonna talk too loud though, because there's a little old field on the other side over there. A little ditch line runs through here. We got a diversion down here and another field on the bottom. That turkey could be anywhere, but that was today, without question, this morning. And there's not a hen trap. I've not cut another trap at all.
Never thought you'd track turkeys down, did you?
Turkey right there. He ain't far. He is not far at all. I'm gonna go down here and set up, because this is where we saw him at last night. And just listen. Maybe do a little blind calling. Sometimes your best bet is to just sneak a little bit, slip a little bit. Use those ears, good Lord gave you. Use your eyes, look around a little bit. So, he's down there and set up. That way I don't burn too much daylight.
This farm right here, for some reason, is like Turkey Farm Central. Every year, it's just full of turkeys. We're literally setting up. If you look here in a little bit, when he zooms in, you can see the vehicle. Actually, I think it's right up here. That might be some cows, I don't know. And Cecil looks up and he goes, what's that out there in the field? And I looked up and I could see over in the green pasture, there was a couple of cows. I said, well, that'd be a cow, Cecil. You know, being a smart aleck that I am. He goes, no, you idiot, in the corn. Oh, look, I said, that'd be a gobbler. He'd walked out. I was like, what the heck? And I'd rather be lucky than good any day. I don't care what. But he's trying to get the camera going and he's asking me questions and I'm trying to get him to get the low light button off from the earlier stuff and I'm explaining it to him and he's a few years older than me, you can't help that. And so I called to this turkey. Now you watch his reaction. He just kind of paused and you look at his demeanor and he's just really disinterested. He's just going to keep walking. By himself, lone gobbler, 11 o'clock. That got his attention. I called a little bit louder. And he's still a little bit disinterested. And I was getting aggravated. Now he answered me. See, you can read his body language. He, all of a sudden, Well, you sound pretty sweet. No reason for me to keep calling. See what he's going to do. Yeah, I believe I'll come down and check you out. Now, this turkey's 300 yards away. I never made another call because he can see from there to me. He has no idea whether that hen is in that diversion, below that diversion. At this point, he doesn't know exactly where she's at. He knows he heard her in that direction. He's going to head that direction. But you watch his demeanor when he gets up there inside of 30 yards, he knows he should be seeing that hen, and he starts that. And if I would have called again at this point, he'd have locked up and started circles and waited for me to come to him. He had no visual. He had nothing there that would lock him in and make him come to me. And this is a point in time when you have to shut up and not call to that turkey as much as you want to. It's the time to put that call down and not say another word to him. He's coming. He's committed. There's no reason to call to him anymore. Now, if he'd have turned and started walking off, I might have soft clucked and maybe something soft. But as long as it's not broken, there's no reason to fix it. And he's a big turkey. This turkey's one of those 25 pounders with 1 1/4 spurs, and I mean, he's a good turkey. Actually, I think they were 1 3/8. And the funny thing was, I have this uncanny ability to set up with some little tree between me and this turkey walks in. The tree's not this big around, but he gets right behind it. And so I can't see him at all. I mean, and I'm not going to lean out and do anything stupid, so I just keep the gun trained, and I go, and I told Cecil, I said, you just tell me which way he's starting to walk so I can start to move the gun barrel when he starts to walk. And he go, he's going to the right. No, he's going to the left. I'm like, all right. I'm just going to sit here and see a visual, see if I can see. Now, he's wide open to him, but I'm just off to the left. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know whether it's this tree or another tree right over here that's got me. But see, at this point now, he's getting borderline gun range right there. But he knows at this point, with his strutting and how he's acting, looking, that he knows he's getting close to where that sound came from. And things like this are not something that you go out the first 2 or 3 or 4 years and you figure out. I mean, it's a learned experience. It's screwing up. Making mistakes is what is a teacher. Being successful is not a teacher. It's making mistakes and failing and getting back on that horse again and riding it and making a success out of it. See, now he knows I should be able to see that hen, and I'm going to strut a little bit, but he's not convinced in his mind that she's not below that hill. But when somebody says a turkey, I remember Ben Lee said he thought a turkey could climb in an old hole, and you could climb in a hole and call one time, and a gobbler walk up there and look in that hole, and I'm convinced he's probably right, especially on a nice calm day like that. They just have the uncanny ability to know exactly where that sound comes from. And a bull elk is exactly the same way. He'll walk right down your broadhead. He knows exactly where you called from. He knows he ought to be able to see her, and I can't shoot him. I mean, I don't even see the turkey. Every now and again I can see a little bit of his fan, but I can't see anything. I've got to let him make a move. And I'm not a patient person. I so bad wanted to go, doop. I knew that was the wrong thing to do. It's hard to quick draw a turkey. That's where Cecil goes, he's going to the left, and then I'm like, okay. But this piece of footage to me is one of the most educational pieces for a turkey hunter, to know when to shut the calling down and let things transpire and learn to be patient about it and let that turkey do what he's committed. Let him do what he's going to do. And now I'm pretty much done, and I'm gonna walk off. I don't see you. You know, and you wish every one of them were that successful, but that's just not the case. But that's what makes it fun, is when something like that happens and when you can see that transpire and you're like, ah, I'm gonna remember that the next time I get in that situation, you know. We'll talk a little bit about calling here. How many of you use a mouth call? Or want to use a mouth call? Huh?
Try to.
Mouth calls can be difficult. I'm trying to separate the reeds here. All right, Kyle. Much of the reason they can be difficult is because we don't properly tell you guys what call you need to start with. A double reed, a standard double reed call, and Nightingale makes a little kit called the Beginner 2-pack, and it's got a standard double reed and a double reed split, which gets a little raspier as you learn to break the double reed over. A double reed naturally gives you a high and a low. That's what a turkey's voice is made up of, a high pitch and a lower pitch as the pitch goes up and down. And a double reed naturally allows you to get that once you manipulate it, but the biggest thing is getting comfortable with that call. All of our calls are made with aluminum frames so you can bend it to fit the roof of your mouth. I recommend make sure that it fits you and that you're comfortable with it. And the tape is put on there for two reasons. One's an air seal, and two is for comfort. Because, I mean, trust me, when that aluminum frame hits a filling, it'll light you up. It's like nails on a chalkboard. But you put it in, and ours always have a turkey foot on it, so the turkey foot always goes up. And you're just trying to obtain a high note. And you're not putting it too far back, but you kind of put it in and slide the front of the call kind of up towards the front of where your teeth are. And you're using kind of the middle of your tongue, if you will, not the tip of it, but kind of the middle of it. And so I pushed it up there, and I want to put air into it. So the first note I want to get is a high note. Now this is a raspy call, so it's not going to be like a high note. Now I get that. I'm going to drop my jaw, which automatically brings your tongue off of it slightly, and you get a low note. And that's exaggerated. Now if I say the word chick, that kind of puts that together. Get the call in right. Now that kind of gets where you got the high and the low. You see that yelp, 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 yelp. Now I take it one step further from there and try to say the word yelp, but you're not really saying yelp. You're kind of mimicking the sound through the airflow. Keep. And you hear that yelp kind of coming out into the call. Now, when you watch an old hen call, you see that her belly will move, her whole body will kind of move a little bit because she's bringing it up from her diaphragm. That's where her sound's coming from. When you talk, if you would just continually talk and not take a breath, all of a sudden your stomach starts drawing in and you don't have any air. And that's because you're bringing that air up from your diaphragm. So you learn to do that with a call, and I'll do it all three ways. You'll see how the realism starts coming into the call. So the first way, saying the word chick, starting the call. Now yelp. Now, using my diaphragm and trying to really sound like a turkey. You see the difference? It's almost coming out of my throat because I'm using my diaphragm. I've been doing it for a long, long time, but that's the whole practice session, is learning how to do that. And you go right on YouTube right now, and all that's right there for you. And that's where, you know, that's where I go to learn how to play the guitar, and that's where people are learning to run a turkey call, because with YouTube, what's nice is you can go pause, rewind, practice, pause, rewind, practice. I mean, it'll drive your kids and your wife and your family members crazy, but who cares? This thing comes around once a year, man. You might as well be comfortable with it. But mouth calls are probably my favorite overall call because it just kind of leaves you all freed up to do things. But they're not the end-all, solve-all, and it's certainly not what all I have in my vest. That vest was thrown in my truck the day I got back. I literally have been home 2 days. The day I got back from Alabama, and I just threw it back in the back of my truck, and that's what I take with me. And I'll change it out a little bit. I love a friction call. I love a glass call. Why do I like a glass call? Glass calls to me are a little bit more, they've got more versatility for me, because I can get soft with it and I can also get loud with it. There's a time you want to get loud with a call. But everybody thinks that you have to have a diaphragm in order to call when a turkey gets in close. But if you just learn to you know, you can set that call down. And now, if you put that on the ground, it's not going to be that high pitched. You know, you can learn to run it one-handed if you want to, and I've done that a lot. You can have your gun up. All you got to do is drop everything and pick your hand up on your gun and go. You can be pretty versatile if you just learn and practice with it. But friction calls, we've got a waterproof striker, and it's called the Night Striker, and I don't have it with me, unfortunately. But you know, it's like holding a pencil and then getting the proper angle. But the biggest mistake people make is they want to bring the striker off the call. That striker doesn't make any sound going backwards. So if I just make the proper rhythm, and if I want to cluck, I just lengthen the striker up, meaning I put more distance between my fingers and the end of the call. I want to cut. I'm just clucking a little bit faster with a little bit different rhythm. Cackle. I'm just doing the same thing. I'm clucking, but I'm just kind of doing it in a pattern where it's higher to lower. You can do anything on a friction call. I don't know if you guys have a fall season here. Do you have a fall turkey season here? Kiki run. You heard of Kiki run? You can do it on a friction call. It's a matter of practicing that thing. And just go on YouTube and watch these things and listen and learn, and you just practice along with it until you're matching that rhythm and matching that tonal qualities, and take that out. You don't have to be a perfect caller to kill turkeys. What I think is important is rhythm. I hear a lot of guys, especially in my part of the country, where a turkey will gobble and he'll gobble, and he'll gobble, and it's repetitive calling. And turkeys don't do that. It's like me with the guitar. I know about 4 chords. My wife gets tired of me playing 4 chords. I got to learn different songs that go with those 4 chords. It's like all Johnny Cash songs. I mean, they all have the same kind of rhythmic pattern to them. Turkeys key in on that. Are they smart enough to understand that? No. But after a while, they key in on that and go, Martha's never done that before. You know, and you start losing responses from turkeys. They don't gobble at you quite as well. Think about that conversation. For example, you guys are married or dating?
Getting married.
Getting married. Well, congratulations to you. And I'm sure as you get into your marriage, and she's going to ask you to take out the trash, and about the 3rd time she does it, I'm going to promise you that voice is going to change. Turkeys have emotions. Sometimes they're soft and subtle, and sometimes they're loud and aggressive. And so if that same rhythmic thing isn't doing it, think about this. Think about whispering sweet nothings. All of a sudden you've changed that whole complex. He's listening to that and like, He doesn't say anything, and all of a sudden you come back and You hit him with something louder, a little more aggressive, a little more, you know, I want a response, bang, he gobbles at it. And then you come back with a little softer call and see if that doesn't change the whole. It's about learning to what his language is telling you to do back for him. But learn to break that calling up and get real with it. Now, you don't have to sound perfect, but get real with the rhythms and portraying a real conversation with a turkey instead of just a standard pattern of calling all the time. And you can do it with any call. This little sweet hen's one of my favorite calls in the woods, and I'll tell you why. Because I think turkey callers get in general, they think they have to call louder. Turkeys hear really well. They hear really well because I know I can make soft calls even on windy days at pretty long distances, and they'll gobble at it, and you know that's what they're gobbling at. So they have to hear pretty good. Now, they get panicky on windy days too. I've had turkeys on windy days react to calling and come to it as fast as they can come to it because they don't necessarily directionalize it absolutely perfect. And so they want to get as close as they can to hear it again to really get a pinpoint and directionalize that calling. But I like to have these little soft calls, especially early in the morning when those turkeys are on the roost and you're setting up tight with them. And all I want to do is let him know where I'm at. Just a little old soft stuff. See, I can change the pitch of that by just opening my hand up. Now I sound like two turkeys. Clucking. Anytime that turkey gets in there 75, 80, 100 yards and he just won't break, won't do anything, start that little soft stuff like that, a lot of times that changes the whole complexity. I'm gonna do, how many of you know about a tube call? This was the first call ever developed by Harold and David. It's the first call they ever came to market with. The first one they brought out was actually a goose tube. Harold won like two or three world goose calling championships with it. I am not going to goose call on this. This is a turkey tube call. It's very versatile, and in my opinion, one of the most overlooked calls used. And guys that have a hard time with a diaphragm, maybe it gags them, they have a hard time using one of them, this is a great alternative. The deal is it will tickle your lip if you don't put your lip in there and give it some force. You don't just want to set it on there. But the realism that this call portrays is incredible, and the versatility is incredible with this call. Now, yes, you have to use your hand to hold it up there, but you can drop it really quick. And what I do is, if I want to quiet it down, I'm calling, is, of course, you have gloves on your hand, and I cut my finger and thumb out so I can feel things. I ruin gloves constantly, but I like to be able to feel my striker in my hand. You're just putting your lip, you see there's a gap there, you're just putting your lip and covering that gap and pushing air. And so if I'm going to cluck, I like to say the word took. See, I can quiet it down, I can do what I want to. I want to yelp, I'm just going. I can gobble on the call. I can kiki on it. I can Jake yelp on it. I can do just about anything I want to on this call. It's really, really versatile. And the neat thing about a tube call is about 10% of the people in turkey woods use them. Let's talk about locator calls, because to me locator calls are extremely important. And one thing about locator calls that I think is really important is the usage of them. We all know they gobble at owls in the morning and they gobble at crows a little bit later. My favorite all-around locator call is a crow call, simply because it's so versatile. Just right at first light, you can use it all the way through the day, and I just really like that. But I carry an owl hooter with me, even though I can do it with my voice. I get a little bit louder with the hooter. But the biggest thing that I find goes on with locator calls is really the improper use of a locator call, meaning not sounding like the real predatory animal that he's gobbling at, whether it be the crow or the owl. You know, you hear a lot of this. Nothing like an owl does. The most important thing is to get a hoot like a real owl and get off of it so you can hear. So I always started off with one note. Actually, a little better than that. Just one loud note. All I want to do is get on it and get off of it so I can hear him gobble. If that don't work, I'll go through the whole hoot sequence. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And I want to make it sound real as I can, because if it gets fakish, if it sounds like it's not for real, oftentimes they won't answer it. These turkeys get gun shy of locator calls because they're blown so many places. How many of you hunt public land? And you just, you know, you try to crow call, you try to owl hoot, and nothing answers. We see that all the time. Our turkeys won't even hardly gobble in the evening anymore at anything. So I started using a coyote howler. Nobody uses them. They answer it because it's not something people use constantly, and they get, you know, it's like the boy that cried wolf. If you do it so much that they finally just get used to hearing that sound that doesn't do nothing to them, doesn't make a shop gobble. Same way with a crow. I hear so much of that going through the woods. Not making fun of it, it's just they don't know how to use a crow call. Because get on YouTube, you can learn how to use a crow call. But all you're wanting to do is to get loud enough to make the turkey gobble and sound like a crow. I just want to do like 3 or 4 notes, and I want to hit it really hard. In fact, I think we had a piece of footage several years ago where this crow flew over the top of a gobbler's head, and he was like, "Arr, arr." And when he got over the top of his head, he hit a really hard note. And when he did, the turkey gobbled. And it was like one of the best learning tools for someone to utilize a locator call, such as a crow call, that I ever saw. But the way I'll use one is I want to just get on it quick. I want to get gravelly with it, and I just want to get off of it so I can hear the turkey gobble. I don't hear like I used to. I hear pretty good, but I don't hear like I used to. So it's really nice when I take my 12-year-old son, because I can stand him over there. He can hear one gobble where you're just like, I can't walk that far. I'm just not even going to do it. I mean, it's unbelievable how those young ears work, you know. But just remember to sound like a crow. If you want to get high, I'm just trying to make a turkey gobble. Not trying to call a crow in, but I want to make sure I sound as much like a crow as I can to make that turkey gobble and get as loud as I can with it, because that's the whole idea about using a locator call, is to get loud with it. We have any questions to this point? Okay, yeah. Gobbler call, gobbling at them? Yep, it works really, really, really good. And I use a tube call. You know, you can use a shaker gobble call. You can use the mouth blown gobble calls. Gobble call works really well. Just be careful with that. I mean, you know, we're smart enough to know when to use something, when not to use something. I mean, you hear people say, well, that could be dangerous. Yeah, it could, but you know, I believe that I'm not going to stand out in the middle of the road and say that a truck's going to hit me and it's not my time. I mean, that'd be ignorant. I'm not going to go on a piece of public land where there's 14 cars parked and go running through the woods gobbling. You know, I mean, you gotta watch what you're doing. You just gotta be careful with it. But gobbling works really good. I'll tell you a really effective call that you're gonna find this time of year, but that's 2 gobblers fighting. And this time of year, they're trying to establish that dominance. And oftentimes what I'll do, and I'll even do it where I put a mouth call in my mouth and use a friction call at the same time. I'm purring. If you can gobble with a mouth call, you can create a fight. And that sometimes, when you get these birds all flocked up like they're all right now, and they're all in those bunches, by doing that and kind of creating what I call that little party, it'll absolutely turn them inside out and you'll call the whole flock in. So just using those little tricks and little tactics and being comfortable with your calling, to me, is really, really key. We all have to be good woodsmen. We want to try to set up close. We want to try to, put ourselves in position, not set up where they got to cross a river or come through a thicket to get to us. But being comfortable with your calling, to me, is a real big factor, because if you're afraid to use these calls and you're not comfortable with it, then you're really missing out on a ton of fun, because turkeys are a blast to call in. They're a blast to watch work to a call, and you become a way more effective hunter if you know how to use your calls properly, and you can use several different ones effectively. And there's certain calls, that's why we carry a bunch of them in our turkey vest, is there's one or two pitches and tones that you will hit on a turkey that he will respond to and come to. I mean, it's just seems to be that's what I find, and that's why I carry 2 or 3 different mouth calls with me that sound different. I carry a friction call, carry a couple of them. I've got a box call in there. I carry a couple different strikers that make the friction call sound different. So I carry a tube call. That's the reason why I carry that stuff, is because there's going to be one call that I hit and he'll gobble at that may be the reason why I get to take him home with me and I go home empty-handed.